like what they say, whole court. They used to go to a gym and just work out. And after you know how it is, you in the gym, the people know that you're an attorney. The kids always want to have a question answered, and especially if you know some of them, you balling with them. So they'll say, hey, Bash, could you tell me so and so and so and so? And it got to the point to where there'd be so many questions. I just started like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. After I finish running, after I get my workout, y'all meet me outside. What we'll do is we'll talk about it. It would go into late into the evening and into the hours, and it would sound something like this.
Gems, always gems. Firstly, Dad, give people your background, where you got your real life education, then where it is that you got your schooling, and then also a little bit about your actual credentials, because one of the things that I noticed that we see a lot of people on TV that have following credentials but don't have real life, real experience credentials in what it is that we're dealing with regards to Black lives and Black lives mattering.
All right. Well, you know, I do hate credentials. I think credentials are like buttholes. Everybody seems to have at least one. All right. But born and raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey, in the Bullard Manor Housing Project, 6 in South Park Street, Eastwood, Cat. Went to Howard University, majored in journalism, finished Howard Law School, been practicing criminal law for 28 years. Got kicked out of the profession this year on principle. Principle is something else, you know. So my hat off to Alton Maddox and brothers like him. And I guess that's the synopsis. 28 years of experience. Been writing for Don Diva magazine, a column called Raw Law, which I try to explain the process to people and the mentality. And my book, Raw Law and Urban Guide to Criminal Justice, 1. If I can get in touch with Don Diva, you'll see Raw Law 2, which will be a collection of my essays from Don Diva. But the one I'm really excited about is what I hope will be out this summer. It's called America in Blackface, which is a description of Black leadership and why there's an impediment to Black progress because of Black leadership.
With regards to the 2 incidents that have just occurred with another case of police killing Black men that have done absolutely nothing wrong. Then most recently I saw on my Facebook, supposedly the KKK had a rally in Atlanta, Georgia in Piedmont Park. Then mysteriously a Black man ends up hanging from a tree that they ruled a suicide, but the FBI is investigating. How do you feel about not just how do you feel about these incidents, but what is it that people seem to be missing every single time these incidents occur?
They're missing the history. They're missing. We are repeating the process. It's like reinventing the wheel. Everybody says that they're not going to reinvent the wheel, but they do, because each generation comes along as if they made a change, and you hear the leadership tell you, "Look how far we've come." Well, yeah, we've come far if you understand that in Ida B. Wells was trying to get an anti-lynching bill passed, and the people who were doing the lynching were 9 times out of 10 supported by the police or the police themselves of Black people. And now jettisoned from 1901 to 2016, and now you got these 9mm lynchings by police officers. It's a psychosis. It's a mental process. It's embedded in the culture, and that embedment in the culture is what? A Black man has no right that a white man is bound to respect. But that was 1867, 1897. That was Plessy versus Ferguson. So wait a minute, are we still repeating the same lessons with each generation that comes along and says, hey, yeah, well, we change, and somehow somebody is going to be benevolent. That wasn't benevolent 100 years ago. H. Rap Brown once said something. He was talking about nationalism. H. Rap Brown. So it had to be, he was H. Rap Brown, he's Jamil El-Amin now, so it had to be somewhere in the mid-60s when he said this. And he's saying that everybody should have their own level of nationalism. Chinese should have nationalism. African Americans should have nationalism. Puerto Rican should have nationalism. And when he gets to Europeans, white people, he says, well, they should be more humane. Stokely Carmichael, mid-60s. I'm going to the 60s because I don't want to take you back to Martin Delaney and in the early 1800s and Frederick Douglass in the mid-1800s, who said in his 4th of July speech about a nation who's committed more crimes that would be like a nation of savages. All right? Because there's a mentality here that when you dehumanize a people, you get to do whatever it is that you want to do with them, and you look at them like they're the issue. But Stokely is basically saying, I already knew I was a human being. You pass civil rights legislation so that they, the people who are acting inhuman, could begin to come into humanity. And that's the part that we keep seeing in the midst. That the people who need to have their humanity checked are the people who are pulling the trigger, not the person who may have had some CDs, not the person who may have been selling some loose cigarettes, not the person who's walking down the street with some Skittles and look menacing. We need to stop fooling ourselves into believing that the people who have designated us as their enemy, that is people of color, especially the black man as their enemy, have somehow woken up to the idea of that their humanity should take over. Their humanity has never taken over. What's going to have to take over is the humanity of the people who apparently are the oppressed. And therefore, you can't accept that their level or way of doing a system is acceptable, that they never had humanity in it from the beginning. If you have humanity as your base and they don't have humanity as their base, why are you following their lead?
So the reason why I played that is because, again, what I'm trying to get you to understand is how raw this show is supposed to be, because that's just the nature of what we really need right now. We need to come to an understanding of who we are and how do we move forward as a community in this particular system. Either we are going to get to the point to where we can restructure it, and I didn't say reform it. I know everybody is out there using that word. All your politicians are using the word reform, which just means add some more stuff onto the nonsense, restructure it, or we're going to find ourselves totally occupied and victimized by this particular system. So back to search and seizure. One of the strategies of search and seizure is, if your lawyer is smart, he knows that search and seizure motion gets him the opportunity to question the main officer in the case that's against you. There's nothing like having a shot at an officer when you're questioning him, and sometimes the rules are relaxed. See, the rules of evidence are a little bit more relaxed in a search and seizure motion. And if your case is based on the seizure, whether they seize the gun, whether they seize drugs, whether they entered your home with a warrant or without a warrant, etc., that gives you a shot at an officer prior to trial. Now, what does that do? Good cross-examination will open up some things that will allow you to go back and review and now say, here's where the holes are in this officer's testimony. Or it allows you to ask those questions, like the questions they asked of this officer who was the lead of this task force. Because if he has outstanding complaints against him, which is what the argument is right now, the court ruled in his case, or in somebody's case who had sued on behalf of a defendant, that this officer who has baggage arrested my client. And so I should be able to cross-examine him because these complaints, which are similar to the complaint my client is making, impact on his credibility. And the jury should be able to hear about him and the complaints that help demonstrate his lack of credibility. Can you imagine, honestly, officers literally run around with 10, 15 complaints of beating up someone on the street. And then they get in court on what they consider to be a clean arrest, and the prosecutor moves them forward as a star witness, and they're testifying that they didn't assault so-and-so and so, and they didn't do anything like this here, because you never have the opportunity to question them about their prior bad acts. Prior bad acts are admissible in almost every kind of a case, except when the court says that it's not. What does that mean? Prior bad act would mean, for example, if it were you and you were a defendant and you had a prior criminal record, you were convicted of a crime, that crime could come in against you. This is why sometimes your lawyer will tell you, I can't put you on the witness stand because they'll hear all about your priors. You know the facts of the case better than the lawyer does. And sometimes because of maybe the language, maybe the culture, you're unable to communicate with that lawyer about what the actual facts are, in a way that he or she will be able to understand it and make it meaningful in a courtroom. But you can't testify. You got a prior record. You took a plea for third degree or what you thought was a minor marijuana case because you got probation. But now you're charged with cocaine. So when you take the witness stand, they get to ask you, don't you have a prior conviction for a drug offense? Bam, your credibility is shot. Well, you don't get a chance to do that with an officer because he doesn't have a prior conviction. He may have an entire dossier of internal affairs reports where complaints. And obviously it's the police investigating the police. So how often do they investigate them and sustain a complaint that would be admissible. Isn't that what your consent decrees are about? Didn't they come in to Baltimore, and didn't they go into Seattle, and didn't they go into New York, and didn't they go into Ferguson, and didn't they go into St. Louis, and didn't they go into Charlotte with consent decrees and find that the police were continually violating the first, fourth, 14th amendments of the United States Constitution? There's that Fourth Amendment again, that search and seizure, that illegal search and seizure. They're finding this in a consent decree in a town like Baltimore, but the officer is being allowed to testify in a case that he didn't illegally search you. And you're not even allowed to bring up in the courtroom that the whole police department was found by virtue or agreed to a consent decree that says that they were doing these illegal things. So you have to be very shrewd, and this lawyer may find that you don't have a decent motion, but he's filing the motion anyway if he's smart, because he wants that shot at the officer, and he wants the shot at being able to argue to the judge, there may be a complaint out here. I'm hearing rumors that there's a complaint out here against this officer, and I would like to have discovery that shows that this report, that this complaint is consistent with my client's defense here, and I want to use it to impeach the officer's credibility. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to do it. The reason why they're about ready to do it in this case is because the officer is charged in a federal case with 5 or 6 other officers. And so they have a history that they've laid out of bad behavior, criminal behavior, alleged criminal behavior, because I even want to give them the benefit of the doubt. So that's your issue of search and seizure. Your lawyer may be using this search and seizure motion as a way of getting you the best opportunity at trial to cross-examine the witness. Now, I'll tell you this here. The kid who asked me this question, if he's listening, I don't give specific advice on specific cases. So I'm glad you kept your question general. And because I don't want to interfere with any strategy of any particular officer, but I do want officer of the court, either lawyer or whatever, but I do want you to understand the system. All right. So I will give you a very generic answer, which I tried to do right there. Those of you who are interested in talking and have some questions, if you want to call, don't call with a specific question like my case says so and so and so, or my discovery says so and so and so, or my police report says so and so and so. I will not respond to that. All right. The call-in number here is 404-436-1277. Again, 404-436-1277 if you want to call in. Now, with that said, let me go on to another question. I got an email here. All right. He says, I was at a forum at Howard University, heard you talk about knowing your rights. I tell my son the proper stuff about showing your hands, etc. Right. We just went through that. Can you explain perception in a way that you think he would understand? All right. I think I tried to do that, but I'm going to make it as raw and as simple as I can. You're black. The cop is black. Cop has indicia of power and credibility because he has the uniform and the badge. You have no indicia of power and credibility. Your community has been made to look criminal. So therefore, when you walk in that room, you got to hope that there's some jurors who are from your neighborhood who understand that your community is being set upon and that potentially you might be innocent. You just might be one of those kids that they decide to pick up. But what happens when you open your mouth and you start arguing with the cop? He got you on body camera and you cussing, I ain't do this, I ain't do that, I ain't do this, and you loud and you boisterous, etc. Now, there's one or two ways to use it. If I'm the defense attorney, I got to decide whether I want the jury to see you like that. They want to see you out of control. All right? Because the officer is smart. He's going to charge you not only with the drugs that he plants on you or the drugs that he finds on you. He's going to charge you with disorderly conduct or resisting arrest, something that demonstrates your volatility, that you're out of control. And so therefore he had to protect himself against how arrogant or how loud or how abrasive you were. He's going to do all those things. He's not stupid. He knows he's going to have to cover his behind. So that perception is being created by you because you didn't control the circumstance that you were in when you were out there on the street or out there on the block. You understand perception? Young, black, male, America, mark checklist on it, perceived as criminal. It's absolutely wrong. It's absolutely illegal. It's absolutely stereotyping. It's absolutely racial profiling. but it is done every day. Don't let anyone fool you into believing that it's not happening. It continues to happen. I don't care how many of these fake consent decrees that the Obama administration signed when they should have been suing all these police departments and shutting them down for the conduct that they say was illegally violating your rights. The fact that they have a consent decree, all these consent decrees say one thing: be a better cop, do the job right. How, I mean, do you really need to do that? I mean, you don't need to tell a teacher to do the job right. You don't need to tell a priest to do the job right. You don't need a consent decree to tell a lawyer to do the job right. Some of us suck. And if we suck, people tell us all the time, you suck. They don't hire us. But perception is key. He comes with an air of credibility, regardless of the circumstance. You come with no air of credibility, regardless of the circumstance. You have to fight for your life to get out. I know you think that there's a presumption of innocence, and that's written into the law. But believe me, you are battling uphill based on perception. And this isn't just a perception that comes from you. It's 300, 400 years worth of indoctrinated perception, even to the point to where black people believe in the perception. When they had the rebellion in Baltimore, it was black people calling young kids thugs. They didn't see the rebellion. They didn't see the anger on these kids for being set upon day after day after day. 600,000 stop frisk in a town where there's only 600,000 black people. The statistics are crazy. If the report doesn't come out from the Justice Department saying what was going on, you'd still have black people talking about, look how bad these kids are. And they still do it. So when you walk into that jury room, I'll give you a story. This is an anecdote. You ready? I'm trying this case in a town that's all white, 99% white. And the kid who's charged is a major drug dealer. I'm talking major. Guns and drugs. And he comes into the courtroom, and we're about ready to pick a jury. And there are 3 black men in the jury pool of 100 people. The first 2 people that they seat in the box are black males. All white, upper middle class town. The first 2 people I kicked off the jury were those 2 black males. Boy, this kid's mother went through the roof. During the break, she comes up to me like she was going to stab me in the heart. What are you doing? What are you doing? And all I could see was that they were looking at me and that brother like we were embarrassing them in front of all these good white people. So I went with an all-white jury and got an all-white acquittal. Because if we had left those brothers in there, or those brothers on that jury, they would have been the ones telling white people how black kids act. Without them, that left me to tell them how black kids act. And so if I had any credibility in the courtroom on that day, my credibility ruled the day. And that's when, after we got the verdict, the mother was like, do you really think that black men think like that? I said, no. Most black men have an experience with dealing with black kids. I said, but those cats, they were much more interested in the fact that they lived in, it was called Somerset County. They were in there with their penny loafers and their button-down shirt, and they were hobnobbing with their, what they considered to be their peers. And they would have been the most vicious jurors against a black man, a young black boy, who they would have considered a thug in the courtroom. So I kicked their behinds off, and I would kick their behinds off again. But again, perception. We have to argue against perception each and every day. If your lawyer doesn't understand perception, educate him. Buy him a Donald Goines book before he starts representing you. Make him read make sure he read the autobiography of Malcolm X, so he knows how you're being perceived when you walk into a courtroom. All right? Ask him if he ever heard of Neely Fuller or Francis Cress Welsing. Ask him if he's ever really been to a hood, if he even knows what hood means. Here's another example. I'm getting ready to try another drug case, right? And one of the cops, who's a good friend, he comes over to me and he says, you know, just place me on a task force. And I was like, yeah. He says, yeah, they placed me on a task force with these narcotics detectives. And I heard some of them are testifying in your case tomorrow. It's like, yeah. He said, this is between me and you. But do you know that they were literally in the office listening to tape recordings of what they said with your client, and he kept using the phrase every time he says something, he say, nah, mean. And they were looking up in their lexicon and in their dictionaries and everything in all their computers, who is this guy, nah, mean? And I'm sitting there listening to them saying, these are the experts. But it shows you how cavalierly they treat our community, like they can get away with anything. They perceive us as being dumb. They perceive us as being not worthy. They perceive us, as I said in that tape, the way, and by the way, let me correct, in that tape, I said it was Plessy. It's Dred Scott, the Dred Scott case, 1856, I believe. A black man has no right that a white man is bound to respect. We need to come to terms with that. Because if we do, and when we do, we will begin to seize control of our own narrative for the second time, maybe for the third time. We tried to seize control of it during Reconstruction, and they burned up everything that we had. We tried to seize control of it in the Civil Rights Movement, and they assassinated everybody we had. But if we don't seize control of it now, bruh, they're pumping guns and drugs in our community so we can kill each other off, and then using the criminal justice system and their people's perception of us to lock all of you all up, to lock all of us up. So please beware. That's what it is to have perception. All right? Anybody else with a question? Let me see. I got one more, and then I'll let you all out of here. I got maybe about 2 minutes. I'm going to make this one short and sweet. How do you pick a jury? Beginning next week, on next week, we're going to do a whole thing on jury selection, because I just went through that little discussion with the juror there, the black jurors. There's no art to it. Don't let anybody tell you that they get jury consultants, they do body language, etc. I studied all those things, body language, etc. But as a defendant, you want to participate in that, because there's some things that from the street, street swag, gut, you have to be willing to participate. You can't rely on your lawyer to do all of that for you, even if he or she thinks she's smarter than you. There's some things that about human nature that I don't care what anybody says. You'll be able to tell. None of them may have gotten on the elevator and had the person hide their pocketbook, but you might have been in that situation. None of them may have been walking down the street and got side-eyed by someone, but you might have been in that situation. No, none of them have ever been accused of being the criminal and have the police walk up to them and say, well, where are you coming from? Being questioned for no reason. None of them. But you may have, and that's something that you can bring to them when you see that attitude again, when that person steps into the jury box. Always look for that attitude and always be willing to participate. Always, you have to participate. If you don't participate, believe me, you're leaving yourself at the mercy of people who do not understand your community and frankly, don't give a damn about your community, many of them. A lot of you are going to wind up with public defenders. Some of the best lawyers I've ever seen have come from public defenders. But just on the other hand, the same thing with any other profession. Some of the absolute worst. Some of them are in it for the dollar. Some of them are in it for the prestige. Some of them are in it to learn how to try cases so they can get recognized by the prosecutor's office and move over to the real welfare system where they really want to be. And some of them just don't give a damn. They just know when they make some money here, they can move out into the real world because they got you as a client and you're a drug dealer and you got a posse of 10. So that means there's 10 guys that he's going to be representing because he did right by you. And that's really all he really cares about. So that's that. Remember, jury selection. And in jury selection, there's an amendment that's attached to that. I want you all to look it up. I want somebody to call me next week. They'll win a copy of the book if they can tell me which amendment that is that allows you to have a trial by a jury, and don't give me no jury of your peers foolishness because it doesn't exist. But the book is called Raw Law, An Urban Guide to Criminal Justice. Cop it. You can catch me at Facebook at rawlawbookings@gmail.com. That's rawlawbookings@gmail.com, and follow some of the things that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to establish this as a class, and I want you all to understand that this is what you're getting here. You're getting a class. All right. I hope you took copious notes, because by the time I'm finished with you, this town and every other town, people in our community are going to be educated on how to try a case, so that when someone steps in front of the bar and they talk in terms that they don't think you know, you'll be able to say, hold it, that's not what my intentions were. Let's move. This is what I want done, since it's my case. All right, we understand each other. All those who understand, raise their hand. Raise your hand a little bit higher. I can't really see because I have my glasses on. All right, now that's good. For all of you all, this outro, this is my man, this is Leftist. I want you to understand something. I'm going to make it home, inshallah, real easily, I guess, as long as the police don't get me. Peace.
This is not a plea. I don't ask for your consensus. You don't gotta lie to me.